They told us the mission was simple. Get in, extract the package, get out. 12 minutes, they said. We'd be back at base before sunrise, drinking terrible coffee and writing up reports that no one would ever read. They lied. My name is Captain Marcus Webb, United States Marine Corps, Force Recon. What I'm about to tell you is classified, or at least it was. But some truths are too important to stay buried, even when powerful people want them to remain in the dark. This is the story of Operation Silent Valor, the mission that taught me the hardest lesson a soldier can learn. Sometimes the enemy isn't across the battlefield. Sometimes they're the ones giving you orders. It was March 2019. Our team, callsign Phantom 6, had been deployed to northern Syria for 3 months. We were hunting high-value targets, the kind of people who make the world a more dangerous place just by breathing. We were good at our job, maybe too good. The brief came down at 2200 hours. Colonel Patterson himself delivered it, which should have been our first warning sign. Colonels don't usually brief squad-level operations, but we were young, confident, and hungry for action. We didn't ask questions we should have asked. The target was a compound 15 clicks northeast of our position, just across the Turkish border. Intelligence indicated a weapons cache and a mid-level operative from a known terrorist cell. Our job was to secure the cache and bring back any intelligence we could find. Standard snatch and grab. My team consisted of 5 of the best operators I'd ever served with. Sergeant Jake Morrison, my second in command, a kid from Oklahoma who could shoot the wings off a fly at 300 meters. Corporal Sarah Chen, our communications specialist, and the smartest person in any room she walked into. Lance Corporal Devin Taylor, our medic, who'd saved more lives than he could count. Private First Class Miguel Santos, our demolitions expert, who treated C4 like it was Play-Doh. And Corporal James Ghost Williams, our scout, who moved so quietly through the dark that even I sometimes forgot he was there. We loaded into 2 Humvees at 23:30 and rolled out into the night. The desert was cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes you question why humans ever thought living in this part of the world was a good idea. But we were focused. We had a job to do. The drive took 40 minutes. We ditched the vehicles 2 clicks out and moved in on foot. Ghost took point, his night vision scanning the terrain ahead. The compound appeared exactly as the satellite imagery had shown. A cluster of 4 buildings surrounded by a low stone wall. 1 guard tower on the southeast corner. Minimal security, too minimal. Morrison whispered through the comms. Captain, something feels off. This is supposed to be a high-value target, but I'm only seeing 2 sentries, maybe 3. He was right. My gut was telling me the same thing. But orders were orders, and we'd come too far to turn back on a feeling. Stay sharp, I said. Chen, any electronic signatures? Negative, sir. No radio traffic, no cell signals. Place is dead quiet. We breached the compound at 01:15. Ghost neutralized the first sentry without a sound. Taylor took the second. We moved through the darkness like water, smooth and inevitable. The first building was empty. So was the second. The third building was different. As soon as we opened the door, I knew something was catastrophically wrong. This wasn't a weapons cache. This wasn't a terrorist safe house. It was a school. The walls were covered with children's drawings. Tiny desks sat in neat rows. A chalkboard still had the day's lessons written in Arabic. Simple mathematics, basic vocabulary. In the corner, a pile of backpacks, no bigger than the one my 6-year-old niece carried. Captain Chen's voice cracked. Sir, what is this? Before I could answer, we heard it. A sound that made my blood turn to ice. Crying. Soft, terrified crying coming from the building's back room. We moved toward it, weapons raised but hearts sinking. Morrison kicked the door open. 23 children, ages ranging from maybe 5 to 12, huddled together in the darkness, terrified, many of them crying. 3 women with them. Teachers maybe, trying desperately to comfort them and shield them with their own bodies. Santos lowered his weapon immediately. Jesus Christ, Captain, these are kids. These are just kids. I got on the radio. Overwatch, this is Phantom 6 actual. We have a situation. Target location is not, I repeat, not a hostile compound. We have civilians, 23 children and 3 adult females, requesting immediate clarification on intel. Over. Static. Then Colonel Patterson's voice cold and clear. Phantom 6, you have your orders. Secure the location and extract any intelligence. Rules of engagement remain active. Sir, there's no intelligence here. This is a civilian school. We need immediate exfil for these civilians and... Phantom 6, you are not cleared to make that determination. Complete your mission. That is a direct order. Morrison looked at me, his eyes wide. Chen was shaking her head. Even Ghost, who never showed emotion, looked disturbed. And then it hit me. The pieces fell into place with sickening clarity. This wasn't bad intelligence. This was intentional. Someone wanted this place destroyed. Someone wanted these children dead, and they'd sent us to do it, knowing we'd call in coordinates for artillery or air support if we encountered resistance. But why? What could children possibly? Then I saw it, on the teacher's desk, a stack of notebooks. I picked one up and started flipping through it. My Arabic was decent enough to understand what I was reading. These weren't just any children. These were the children of Syrian politicians, military officers, and yes, even some militia leaders. But they also included the children of aid workers, doctors, and local leaders working toward peace. This was a school where both sides of a brutal conflict had agreed to let their children learn together. A symbol of hope, a symbol of possible reconciliation. And someone wanted that symbol erased. Overwatch. Be advised. This location is a protected civilian facility. International humanitarian law prohibits. Phantom 6, you are dangerously close to insubordination. Complete the mission or I will have your team extracted and court-martialed. You have 60 seconds to confirm compliance. I looked at my team. They were looking at me. These were good people who'd signed up to defend the innocent, not murder them. These were soldiers who believed in honor, duty, and the rules that separated us from the monsters we fought. Taylor spoke quietly. Captain, my oath was to support and defend the Constitution, to bear true faith and allegiance to the same. This ain't that. Morrison nodded. Whatever happens, sir, we're with you. I'd spent my entire adult life in the Marine Corps. I'd bled for it. I'd lost friends for it. My father was a Marine, his father before him. This was my identity, my purpose. And in that moment, I had to choose between the institution I loved and the values that institution was supposed to represent. Phantom 6 actual to Overwatch. Mission abort. We are securing civilians and requesting immediate medical and humanitarian support. I take full responsibility for this decision. Captain Webb, you are hereby relieved of command. Remain at your position. A backup team is en route to complete the mission and take you into custody. I switched to team frequency. Listen up. We've got maybe 20 minutes before a hit team arrives to finish what we refused to do. We're getting these kids out. Chen, can you reach anyone besides our chain of command? Sir, there's a UN peacekeeping position about 8 clicks west, and I might be able to get through to some journalists I know who've been covering the humanitarian situation. Do it. Santos, can you make this place look like it's already been hit? Santos grinned. I can make it look like whatever you want, Captain. Make it look like a gas explosion, natural disaster, something that doesn't scream military operation. Buy us time and confusion. We moved fast. The teachers understood enough English to know we were trying to help. We got the children out through a back exit Ghost had scouted. Morrison and Taylor created a perimeter. Chen was on comms, sending out encrypted messages on civilian frequencies. Santos rigged the buildings with precision. He wasn't destroying evidence. He was creating a narrative, a gas leak, a tragic accident, something that would make people ask questions before they started shooting. We moved the children 3 clicks west to a dried riverbed where we could hide them. The teachers stayed calm, keeping the kids quiet, trusting us even though we were foreign soldiers who just raided their school in the middle of the night. Then we heard the helicopters, 2 Black Hawks coming in fast. Our backup, our executioners, maybe both. Chen, Please tell me you got through to someone. Yes, sir. UN peacekeepers are mobilizing. And, Captain, Al Jazeera has a team in the region. They're scrambling. Morrison smiled grimly. Nothing stops a black ops hit quite like international media attention. The helicopters didn't land at the compound. They couldn't. Santos's handiwork had turned it into a smoking ruin that looked like a gas explosion. They circled confused, then headed our direction. We were out of time. I made a decision that still haunts me. I activated my emergency beacon, the one that broadcasts to everyone. Friendly enemy media, aid workers, everyone. This is Captain Marcus Webb, United States Marine Corps. My team and I are protecting 23 children and 3 civilians from an imminent threat. We are requesting immediate international observation and protection. Current coordinates follow. The helicopters kept coming, but so did others. UN vehicles, media trucks, even some local militia, alerted by the explosion and the radio traffic. Within 30 minutes, we were surrounded by so many witnesses that whatever was supposed to happen couldn't happen anymore. The children were safe. We were arrested, of course, flown back to a military detention facility in Germany. I spent 3 months in a cell, waiting for a court-martial that never came, because Chen's messages had worked. The story got out, not the full truth. It never does, but enough. Enough that questions were asked, investigations were opened. The school's existence was confirmed. The children's identities were verified. Someone very high up in the chain of command had tried to order a war crime, and we'd refused. Eventually, we were quietly released, honorably discharged with full benefits, and a stack of NDAs we were expected to sign. The official story was that there'd been an intelligence error, and we'd acted appropriately, given the circumstances. The truth, we never learned who gave the original order or why. Those answers are buried under layers of classification that I'll never penetrate. But I have theories. Theories about defense contracts that required ongoing conflict. Theories about political leaders who benefited from division. Theories about how much money and power some people will sacrifice children for. My team scattered after the discharge. Morrison went home to Oklahoma, started teaching high school history. Chen went to MIT, got her PhD, now works in cybersecurity. Taylor became a nurse. Santos opened a construction company. Ghost disappeared. I hope he found peace. As for me, I work with veteran organizations now. I help young service members understand something crucial. Your oath is to the Constitution, to the ideals and values it represents, not to any individual, not to any single order, and definitely not to people who would abuse your courage and loyalty to do evil things. The hardest lesson I ever learned is that real courage isn't always about pulling the trigger. Sometimes it's about refusing to. Sometimes it's about standing up and saying no, when everyone with power and authority is screaming at you to comply. Sometimes it's about choosing your values over your career, your freedom, or even your life. Those 23 children are alive today. They're teenagers now. Some of them are in college. One of them sent me a letter last year through a UN intermediary. She's studying medicine, wants to be a doctor. She thanked me for giving her the chance to grow up. That letter sits on my desk. On the days when I wonder if I made the right choice, when I think about the career I lost, the friends who stopped talking to me, the suspicion I'll live under for the rest of my life, I read that letter, and I know, without a single doubt, I know that I made the only choice I could live with. You see, the military teaches you discipline, loyalty, and obedience. These are essential virtues. A military, without them, cannot function. But there's something the military sometimes forgets to emphasize enough. The judgment to know when those virtues are being exploited. The wisdom to understand that true loyalty isn't blind obedience. It's staying faithful to the principles you swore to defend, even when, especially when, doing so costs you everything. Every person in uniform will face their moment of truth. Maybe not as dramatic as mine. Maybe it'll be smaller, reporting misconduct when it's easier to stay quiet, protecting a subordinate from an abusive superior, admitting a mistake that could derail your career, speaking truth to power when everyone else is nodding along. In those moments, you'll hear voices. The voice of ambition, telling you to go along to get along. The voice of fear, reminding you of what you'll lose. The voice of tribalism, insisting that loyalty means never questioning your tribe. But there's another voice, quieter, maybe, but unmistakable, once you learn to hear it. It's the voice of your conscience, asking you one simple question. Can you live with this? On that night in Syria, in that moment of decision, I heard that question clearly, and I chose to be someone I could live with. That's the real mission. The one they don't brief you on but should. It's not about following orders perfectly. It's not about advancing your career. It's not even about victory in battle. It's about looking in the mirror every morning and recognizing the person staring back. It's about living with honor, not just talking about it. It's about understanding that the uniform you wear is supposed to mean something. Integrity, courage, commitment to something greater than yourself. If you take nothing else from my story, take this. Authority is not the same as legitimacy. Orders are not always lawful, and sometimes the most courageous thing a soldier can do is stand down, speak up, and say, I will not. 23 children are alive because 5 soldiers chose conscience over compliance. They're alive because we remembered that our job was never to be weapons pointed wherever someone aims us. Our job was to be guardians, protectors, and sometimes when necessary, to be shields between the innocent and those who would do them harm, even when those giving the orders wear the same flag we do. That's the oath, that's the mission, that's what it means to serve with honor. The rest is just following orders, and history has shown us time and again that's never a good enough excuse. There's a postscript to this story that I need to share, something that happened 2 years after that night in Syria. Something that proved the decision we made had consequences far beyond what we could have imagined. I was living in Virginia, working at a veterans center, trying to rebuild a life outside the uniform. It was a Tuesday morning when a young man walked into my office. He was maybe 19, wearing a crisp Marine Corps recruiting t-shirt, eager eyes. The kind of kid who still believed in heroes. Captain Webb, he asked. I'm about to ship out to boot camp. My recruiter told me I should talk to you first. I was confused. Recruiters don't usually send prospects to talk to discharged officers with complicated records, but I invited him to sit down. My name is Kareem, he said. Kareem al-Rashid. I don't know if that name means anything to you. He didn't. Not at first. My older sister, Amira, she was one of the teachers that night at the school. The world stopped spinning for a moment. I stared at this young man, this kid who wanted to become a Marine, and saw the connection I'd never expected to make. She told me what you did, Kareem continued, how you could have followed orders but chose not to, how you protected those children when it would have been easier, safer, to just look the way. She said you showed her that not all soldiers are the same, that some still believe in something bigger than themselves. He reached into his backpack and pulled out a folder. Inside were dozens of photographs, the children from that night, but older now, smiling, graduating, living. This is Yasmin, he said, pointing to a young woman in a doctor's coat. She's in medical school in Jordan. This is Omar. He's studying engineering in Germany. This is Fatima. She teaches at a refugee camp in Lebanon. This is Ahmed. His voice caught. Ahmed was my little brother. He was 8 years old that night. You carried him out yourself. He was so scared he couldn't walk. I remembered, a small boy, frozen with terror, clutching a stuffed rabbit. I'd picked him up, felt his heart hammering against my chest. Where is Ahmed now? I asked quietly. Kareem smiled, tears in his eyes. He's studying computer science at university in Turkey. He wants to build programs that help refugees find their families. He says he wants to help people the way you helped him. For the first time in 2 years, I felt the weight I'd been carrying start to lift. Not completely, never completely, but enough to breathe a little easier. Why are you joining the Marines? I asked him. After everything your family went through. Kareem looked at me with an intensity that reminded me of myself at his age. Because of everything my family went through. Because I learned that night that there are soldiers who do the right thing, even when it costs them everything. I want to be that kind of Marine, the kind who protects people, the kind who has the courage to say no when saying yes would be easier. He paused, then added, "My sister told me to tell you something." She said that night, when everything was chaos and she didn't know if her students would live or die, she saw something that changed her understanding of the world. She saw American soldiers cry because they found children in danger. She saw warriors who were supposed to be hard become gentle. She saw you argue with your superiors, risking everything just to do the right thing. She said it gave her hope, not just for that night, but for the future. That if soldiers like you existed, maybe peace was possible after all. I couldn't speak. There were no words for what I was feeling. Kareem stood up to leave, then turned back. "One more thing, sir. All 23 of those children, they all survived. They all grew up, and every single one of them knows your name. They know what you gave up for them. Some of them are doctors now, teachers, engineers, working to make the world better. They're living proof that one decision, one moment of courage, can change everything." He extended his hand. "I'm going to be a Marine, Captain Webb, and I'm going to remember what you taught me. That honor isn't about following orders. It's about following your conscience. That real strength isn't the courage to pull the trigger. It's the courage to refuse when pulling that trigger would be wrong." I shook his hand. This young man who represented everything I'd hoped to protect that night. After he left, I sat in my office for a long time, thinking about consequences and choices, about how one night of decision creates ripples that spread farther than we can see, about how Kareem would become a Marine, and maybe someday face his own moment of truth, and maybe, because of what he learned from our story, he'd make the right choice too. That's the real measure of courage. Not the medals they pin on your chest, not the stories people tell about your bravery in battle. It's the lives you touch, the example you set, the chain reaction of goodness you start when you choose right over easy. 23 children became 23 adults who are making the world better, and one of their brothers is about to become a Marine who understands what service really means. That night in Syria, we didn't just save lives, we proved something essential. That principles matter more than orders, that conscience outranks command, and that sometimes the greatest act of loyalty is refusing to betray the values you swore to defend. This is why I'm telling you this story, not to glorify myself or my team, but to remind you that your choices echo forward in time in ways you cannot predict, that standing up for what's right, even when it costs you everything, plants seeds that grow into forests of change. And sometimes, years later, one of those seeds walks into your office and reminds you why it was all worth it. So here's my question for you. What's your moment going to be? Maybe you're not in the military. Maybe you'll never face down helicopter gunships or disobey a colonel's direct order. But I guarantee you, at some point in your life, you will face your own version of that Syrian schoolhouse. Maybe it's standing up to a boss who's asking you to do something unethical. Maybe it's speaking out when everyone around you is silent about an injustice. Maybe it's protecting someone weaker when the crowd wants to look away. Maybe it's simply telling the truth when lying would be so much easier. In that moment, you'll have a choice. The same choice I had: compliance or conscience, career or character, the easy path or the right path. I'm not going to lie to you. Choosing right over easy cost me dearly. It cost me my career, my identity, relationships, and years of my life spent wondering if I'd made a catastrophic mistake. There were dark nights when I questioned everything. But here's what I gained. I gained the ability to sleep at night. I gained 23 lives saved. I gained the knowledge that when it mattered most, when everything was on the line, I chose to be someone I could respect. And years later, I gained a young man walking into my office to tell me that my choice inspired him to be better. That's a currency worth more than any rank I could have achieved. Your moment is coming. Maybe it's already here, and when it arrives, I want you to remember this story. Remember that courage isn't the absence of fear. It's being terrified and doing the right thing anyway. Remember that real integrity is what you do when no one's watching, when there's no reward, when doing the right thing costs you everything you've worked for. If this story moved you, if it made you think about what kind of person you want to be when your moment comes, then share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it with a young person trying to figure out what honor really means. Share it with a veteran struggling with their own difficult decisions. Share it with anyone who's ever wondered if standing up for what's right actually matters. Because it does matter, more than you know, more than you'll ever see. The 23 children I helped save that night, they're out there right now, living lives, touching other lives, creating ripples of their own. Kareem is somewhere in boot camp, learning to be the kind of Marine who understands that true strength is moral courage. And somewhere, maybe someone watching this or reading this transcript will face their own impossible choice and remember that someone else chose conscience over compliance and live to tell about it. Be that person. Be the one who stands up. Be the one who refuses to compromise on what matters. Be the one who years from now can look back without regret and say, when it mattered most, I did the right thing. That's the real mission. That's the real victory. That's the legacy worth leaving. Your moment is coming. Be ready for it. And when it arrives, choose courage, choose conscience, choose to be someone you can live with. Because in the end, that's the only choice that really matters. If this story impacted you, if it made you think differently about courage and honor, do me a favor, hit that like button, not for me, but because stories like this need to be heard. Every like tells the algorithm that moral courage matters, that real stories of integrity deserve to be shared. And if you believe more people need to hear stories about choosing right over easy, about standing up when it costs everything, then subscribe to this channel, because I'm not done telling stories. There are more lessons from the battlefield, more moments where ordinary people made extraordinary choices, more truths that need to be shared. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between what was easy and what was right? What did you choose? Or maybe you're facing that decision right now and need some encouragement. This community is here for you. We're all in this together, trying to figure out how to live with honor in a complicated world. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. That friend in the military, wrestling with difficult orders. That coworker being pressured to compromise their ethics. That young person trying to figure out what kind of adult they want to become. Your veteran buddy who's still carrying the weight of impossible decisions. Send it to them. Let them know they're not alone. Thank you for listening to my story. Now go write yours. And remember, real courage isn't just found on the battlefield. It's found in every moment you choose conscience over compliance, character over career, and doing right over doing easy. I'll see you in the next story. Stay strong, stay honorable, and never stop fighting for what matters.